It was 5:02 a.m. on a quiet Saturday morning in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when the 911 dispatcher picked up a call that would change the course of 3 families forever. On the other end of the line was a woman. Her voice shook but remained oddly measured. "There's someone in my apartment," she said. "He's not breathing. I need help." The address was a small studio apartment on the second floor of a modest housing complex tucked into the west side of the city. The neighborhood was still asleep, the sun barely coloring the sky in faint orange light. 2 patrol cars and an ambulance arrived on the scene within 10 minutes. First responders found the front door unlocked. Inside, the apartment was dimly lit, the smell of burned plastic and steam still lingering in the air. The woman who had called, identified later as Erica Monroe, 29, sat at the edge of her bed, hands resting motionlessly on her knees. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Paramedics rushed in, scanning the cramped space. Erica didn't speak. She simply raised one arm and pointed toward the bathroom. They found him there. A young boy, later confirmed as 16-year-old Dylan Parker, lay naked on the cold linoleum floor, his body sprawled awkwardly between the bathtub and the toilet. Beside him knelt a man in his early 30s, desperately performing chest compressions. His name was Alex Turner. He claimed to be a friend of Erica's. Neither he nor Erica said much. But the scene said everything. Dylan's skin was blistered and blackened in large patches, the top layer peeling off his face and torso like paper soaked in acid. The left side of his head was raw, his hair completely burned away from crown to forehead. Steam still clung to the air near the bathtub. Despite immediate attempts at resuscitation, the boy was pronounced dead at the scene at 5:31 a.m. Detectives were called in shortly after. What they found cast heavy doubts on the idea that this was a tragic accident. The living space was small, barely enough for 1 adult, let alone 2 people living full-time. But it was clear someone had been staying there. A sleeping mat in the corner. 2 toothbrushes. A half-finished textbook with GED Prep, 2023, scribbled on the cover. More curiously, a baseball bat, metal not wooden, stood leaning near the window, its grip stained with what looked like dried blood. In the corner near the sink, a tea kettle still sat on the burner. Officers noted scald marks on the linoleum around it. A towel with red and brown stains was bunched beneath the sink cabinet. Erica was taken in for questioning. At first she seemed cooperative. She told officers Dylan had been living with her for a few months, preparing for his GED. She'd been his private tutor, a relationship that started over a year earlier. His parents, she explained, had trusted her to supervise his studies because he'd been struggling academically. Erica said Dylan had moved involuntarily with full parental consent. When pressed about the morning's events, her tone shifted. She claimed that in the early hours, Dylan had tried to touch her. That he'd made repeated advances in the past, but this time had gone too far. "He came at me," she said. "I panicked. I defended myself." Detectives asked how she defended herself. That's when she mentioned the boiling water. "I had just heated it to make tea," she said. "I threw it at him. I didn't know what else to do. And the bat? That was after. I thought he was going to come at me again." But the boy was 16. Erica was 29. And despite the burns and trauma on Dylan's body, there were no bruises or scratches on Erica. No torn clothing. No defensive wounds. It didn't add up. Then came the video. Erica voluntarily turned over a video she claimed supported her self-defense narrative. She had recorded it, she said, to show the escalating tension between her and Dylan. But when investigators reviewed the footage, what they saw raised more questions than it answered. The video, timestamped for 11:03 p.m. the night before, showed Dylan standing in the corner of the room, quietly reciting from a GED textbook. His tone was subdued, his posture passive. Erica's voice could be heard off camera, instructing him to repeat a line again and again. There was no shouting. No visible aggression. No sign that Dylan had become violent or inappropriate. When detectives asked why she continued recording for several minutes without any attempt to call for help or leave the apartment, Erica fell silent. Meanwhile, Dylan's body was taken in for autopsy. The coroner's report was sobering. Cause of death: respiratory failure due to severe burns, compounded by acute inflammation and multi-organ complications. There were signs of older injuries: healed bruises, small linear scars, and what appeared to be healing burn marks across the back and upper arms. Some of them were weeks old. This wasn't a one-time accident. This was sustained abuse. Back at the station, investigators looked deeper. Who was Dylan Parker, really? And what led a teenage boy to live with a woman nearly twice his age? Dylan was the only son of Martha and Daniel Parker, a blue-collar family from nearby Reading, Pennsylvania. A quiet boy, shy but polite. He had dropped out of high school the previous fall, citing bullying and anxiety. His mother had been skeptical, but he insisted the pressure at school was too much. Then came Erica. She had met Dylan when she was a student teacher during his sophomore year. She seemed genuinely invested in helping him. His grades had started improving. She offered to tutor him outside class, and eventually convinced his parents that he could benefit from focused, one-on-one guidance at her home in Allentown. They agreed. They trusted her. Dylan moved in that spring. Over the following months, communication between Dylan and his parents grew infrequent. When they called, he often declined to talk. He told them he was studying hard, that Erica was strict but effective, that he needed to focus. They believed him, until the call came. That morning. That single sentence, "Your son is dead." The Parkers were shattered. And the police? They were just getting started. Because something about Erica's story still didn't fit. The panic in her voice during the 911 call was real, but rehearsed. Her answers during questioning seemed structured, almost as if they had been coached. And the man who had been performing CPR, Alex Turner, wasn't just a passerby. He had been sent to the apartment by someone else. A woman named Courtney Bennett. And Courtney, as it turned out, wasn't just Erica's friend. She was the missing piece of a puzzle far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. From the outside, Dylan Parker's life looked like a detour, not a disappearance. He wasn't missing in the usual sense. His face wasn't on milk cartons. No flyers were posted around town. He still answered his parents' texts, sometimes with a thumbs up, sometimes with a short studying. If you asked his mother, she'd say he was quiet, distant lately, but never truly absent. His teacher said he dropped out to pursue the GED. His classmates just figured he couldn't take the teasing. But now, investigators were piecing together a different truth, one where Dylan hadn't drifted away by accident. He had been removed. Dylan had been a sophomore when he first met Erica Monroe. She was a teaching intern, just finishing up her placement at the public high school in Reading. At the time, Dylan's grades were slipping. He was shy. He rarely raised his hand. But he paid attention, and Erica noticed. She offered to help him after school, unofficially. She said she understood how kids like him got overlooked. Smart but quiet. Dylan responded well to her. His test scores improved. His confidence ticked up. His parents were relieved. Here was a woman who seemed genuinely invested. At some point, the tutoring moved from the school library to Erica's apartment. Then it became regular. By spring, she told the Parkers she had a plan. Dylan was too anxious at school. He was being bullied. Why not let him leave the system and study full-time for the GED? She could supervise him. She would do it for free. We thought it was unusual, Dylan's mother, Martha, later told detectives. But she sounded so sure. So professional. She said he could stay with her just temporarily. That it would help him focus. They agreed. Dylan moved into Erica's studio apartment in Allentown that May. For the first few weeks, everything appeared normal. He called home once or twice a week. He told his parents he was reading more, practicing test questions, drinking too much instant coffee. Erica updated them occasionally too. "He's doing fine," she'd say. "Just needs quiet." But by June, those calls slowed. Then they stopped altogether. And when his parents tried calling, Dylan didn't pick up. What they didn't know, and what detectives were now uncovering, was that Dylan's academic struggles had never been about school. The so-called bullying never existed. The GED plan wasn't his idea. It had been planted by someone else. Courtney Bennett was Erica's closest friend. They had gone to the same teacher training college. Same cohort. Same dorm floor. While Erica had always been reserved, the kind who blended into a room, Courtney had presence. Charismatic. Sharp-tongued. The kind who made people listen when she spoke. She had also interned at Dylan's middle school, around the same time Erica did. Unlike Erica, Courtney didn't take tutoring seriously. She treated it like a joke. But Dylan, just 15 at the time, developed a crush on her. He never said anything directly. But he changed his profile picture on his messenger app to a blurry selfie of her. A digital confession no one confronted. Except Courtney noticed. And she didn't reject it. According to later interviews and digital records, she leaned into the attention. Texting Dylan late at night, teasing him, giving just enough emotional oxygen to keep him attached. It was never physical. Not then. But it was confusing enough for a boy like Dylan, earnest, searching, to believe it might mean something. When Courtney moved back to Allentown for her own certification exams, she stopped replying to Dylan's messages. Cold. Sudden. Just silence. Dylan spiraled. He told his father he was tired of school. Said he just wanted to focus. He never mentioned Courtney. Never explained why he really left. But his silence wasn't strength. It was retreat. What no one realized at the time was that Courtney had grown nervous. Afraid Dylan might eventually tell someone. Or worse, expose the messages. So she made a decision. Sever the tie completely. But do it cleanly. She turned to Erica. Erica owed her everything. The friendship, the internship lead, even emotional validation. So when Courtney asked her to help a boy who's struggling, Erica said yes. No questions asked. Dylan moved in with Erica within 2 weeks. But the arrangement wasn't as simple as it seemed. The studio was cramped. 1 bed. 1 bathroom. A single table pressed against the wall, covered with test prep books and flashcards. Erica worked part-time, mostly grading essays online. Dylan stayed home. The first month passed in quiet routine, breakfast, study, dinner, silence. Then came the text from Courtney. Push him harder, she told Erica. Don't let him slack off. You're too soft. Soon Erica changed. The tutoring became rigid. Breaks were removed. Meals delayed. If Dylan got answers wrong, she'd yell. Then came punishments, standing for hours, writing sentences until his hands cramped. Dylan didn't resist. He believed this was his fault. That if he passed the GED, he might earn back Courtney's attention. That maybe she'd visit. Maybe they could talk. But Courtney never replied. And Erica, under growing pressure, snapped. According to text exchanges later extracted from Erica's phone, she began blaming Dylan for everything. He doesn't listen, she wrote. He stares at the floor like he's already failed. Courtney didn't offer sympathy. Instead, she mocked the situation. Maybe he needs a wake-up call, she said. Or maybe you just suck at discipline. When Erica once wondered aloud if she had hit Dylan too hard, Courtney responded with a joke. Please. I once whipped him with a belt until he bled. Toughen up. By late June, Dylan was no longer a student. He was a prisoner in a room where no door was locked, but no exit was visible. He still believed he had to stay. That the GED was the price of redemption. That love was just on the other side of obedience. Then came June 26th. At 11:03 p.m., Erica recorded a video. In it, Dylan stands against the wall, reciting definitions under his breath. His voice is thin, uncertain. At one point he asks, barely audibly, "Can I take a break?" "No," Erica says off camera. Then, softer, he asks, "Can I hug you?" There's a pause. Then the camera cuts. That footage, that single moment, became a centerpiece of the case. But what mattered most wasn't the video itself. It was what came next. Because that moment was relayed to Courtney. And she, once again, chose to escalate. She told her boyfriend, Alex Turner, to go to the apartment. To see what's really going on, she said. She told Erica to pour boiling water. Make it look real, she said. And Erica obeyed. The boy who once smiled at a blurry photo. Who dreamed of passing an exam for the wrong reasons. Who vanished not with a bang but with silence, had now become a name in a case file. From the beginning, Courtney Bennett had remained invisible. She never showed up at the apartment. Never spoke to the police. Never left a trace, not on paper, not in person. If you only glanced at the surface, you'd think she had nothing to do with Dylan Parker's death. But she was always there. Just not in the frame. Detectives first learned her name when they dug through Erica Monroe's phone records. Dozens of calls. Hundreds of texts. Some deleted, some poorly hidden in messaging apps with different names or no labels at all. They'd been in contact almost daily, including the night Dylan died. One thread in particular stood out. June 26, 10:47 p.m. Courtney, he asked to hug you? Ugh, this kid is cracked. Erica, I didn't know what to do. Courtney, seriously, if you record it, it's proof. Self-defense if anything happens. Erica, already did. Courtney, good. Next time he touches you, pour it. No one will blame you. At first, investigators weren't sure what pour it meant. Then they found the kettle. It wasn't a one-time idea. It was a plan, one they now believed had been escalating for weeks. They subpoenaed Courtney's phone. She refused to cooperate, said she had nothing to hide. Her lawyer called it a tragic situation between two people who lived together and spiraled. But once the devices were turned over, the digital evidence told a different story. She hadn't just advised Erica. She'd orchestrated her. Alex Turner was the next piece. The man found kneeling next to Dylan's body. The one who called 911 but wasn't a relative, not a neighbor, not even a co-worker. Just Courtney's boyfriend, though even that term didn't quite fit. He was quiet during his first interview. Said he didn't know what was happening. Claimed he'd received a late-night call from Courtney telling him to check on her friend Erica, who was freaking out. When he arrived, Dylan was already unresponsive. He tried CPR, then called for help. That was it, he insisted. But phone logs proved otherwise. Courtney had texted him minutes before. June 27, 12:57 a.m. Courtney, go now. She did it. Courtney, film everything. Bathroom. Face. Steam if it's still there. Alex never responded. But 20 minutes later, he arrived at Erica's apartment. 25 minutes after that, the 911 call was made. Police asked Alex if he had taken any videos. He said no. But digital forensics showed he had deleted 3 files between 1:30 and 1:45 a.m. One of them had been uploaded to a private Google Drive linked to Courtney's email. When confronted, Alex finally broke down. In a shaky voice, he admitted he had followed Courtney's orders, but claimed he hadn't known why. She just told me it had to look real, he said. That Dylan was dangerous. He paused. She said it had to look like he tried to do something to Erica. The detectives now saw the bigger picture. Erica wasn't the only one under pressure. She was being directed, controlled, bit by bit. It had started subtly. Encouragement, advice, then judgment, then commands. At one point, Erica texted, "I don't think I can do this." Courtney replied, "Then don't expect me to save you when he files a report." And Erica had believed it, because Courtney had leverage. Not just emotionally, but structurally. She was the one who had vouched for Erica during their teacher certification process. She had written the recommendation that helped Erica get placed. She had introduced her to everyone, hiring managers, internship coordinators, even landlords. To Erica, losing Courtney's support meant losing everything. So when Courtney began pushing harder, suggesting discipline, then correction, then proof, Erica didn't push back. She followed. But the most disturbing part wasn't the manipulation. It was the fabrication. In messages from as early as June 15th, Courtney had been laying groundwork, scripting a version of events that had not yet happened. She told Erica to start writing things down. Notes, diary entries, anything that might suggest Dylan had been acting inappropriately. Then came one damning text. June 22nd, 9:11 p.m. Courtney, if you ever have to explain it, say he got obsessed with you. Say he thought you were his girlfriend or some delusional crap. The truth doesn't matter. Just be consistent. At that moment, any notion that this was about real danger collapsed. It had never been about Dylan's behavior. It had been about control. About protecting Courtney's own secrets. Her earlier involvement with Dylan, the flirtation, the emotional games, the line she had crossed when he was still underage. Now she wanted that loose end gone. And Erica? She was the one holding the scissors. By the time Dylan began breaking down, losing focus, questioning the tutoring, begging to go home, it was too late. Erica felt trapped. She had already poured too much into the lie. She feared exposure. She feared Courtney. She feared being alone. So she escalated. On June 25th, text messages between Courtney and Alex showed they knew Dylan had been injured. That Erica had already poured boiling water on him once. Courtney, so? Is he still there? Alex, yeah. She says his back's peeling bad. She's scared. Courtney, scared of what? Him or the cops? Alex, both. Courtney, then finish it. It wasn't a direct order, but it was close. In the end, Erica confessed. During a second interview, this time without a lawyer, she sat in silence for a long while before speaking. I just wanted him to pass the test, she said quietly. I thought if he passed, everything would go back to normal. Whose idea was the boiling water? The detective asked. Mine, she whispered. But, not really. It didn't feel like mine. She didn't blame Courtney. Not explicitly. But the damage had been done. When she was shown the text evidence, Erica broke down. I thought she was helping me, she said. I thought she was saving me. Dylan's parents were told the full truth on a rainy Monday afternoon, 3 weeks after the incident. Martha Parker listened in silence. Her husband, Daniel, paced the hallway of the precinct. Neither spoke for almost 10 minutes after the summary ended. He was just a boy, Martha finally said. He wasn't dangerous. He was confused. He needed help. She looked up. You gave him monsters instead. The case was forwarded to the district attorney's office that same week. Prosecutors began preparing charges, not just for Erica but for Courtney and Alex as well. But the legal path ahead wouldn't be simple, because intent, unlike bruises, is hard to prove, especially when the people holding the matches insist they never meant to start a fire. To understand how Erica Monroe became capable of hurting a boy she once swore to protect, you have to go further back, long before Dylan ever entered her life. You have to start with Courtney Bennett. They met during sophomore year at a small liberal arts college in New York State. Erica was the kind of student who took detailed notes, always raised her hand and sat front row. Courtney sat in the back, didn't take notes at all, and still aced every exam. They couldn't have been more different. Courtney was magnetic. She had friends in every department, was the center of every room she entered. Erica was quiet, reserved, rarely invited anywhere, and rarely missed. And yet, somehow they became friends. Some said Courtney took pity on her. Others thought she liked having someone who followed her without question. Erica never questioned it. She admired Courtney deeply, to the point of imitation. Courtney studied education, so Erica did too. Courtney applied for internships at competitive schools. Erica followed her. When Courtney bought a new phone, Erica got the same model a week later. It wasn't a friendship built on balance. It was one built on gravity. Courtney pulled. Erica moved. Detectives called it dependency. Prosecutors called it manipulation. But to Erica it felt like loyalty. Back in 2009, during college, Courtney introduced Erica to a man named Logan. He never showed up in person. Never visited campus. He supposedly lived abroad, doing something vague and impressive. Import-export. Sometimes banking. Sometimes family business. He and Erica started talking online. Messaging led to phone calls. Phone calls led to long confessions about dreams, fears, everything in between. He told her she was special, that she was different, that she needed to trust him. Erica believed every word. She never questioned why she had to send money sometimes. Why Logan would disappear for days, then reappear with strange requests. Why he said his mother was in danger and only Erica could help. When she asked Courtney for advice, she said, "He loves you. Just do what he says. Trust takes sacrifice." For years passed. They never met. And then, in 2013, months before Dylan's death, investigators discovered that Logan didn't exist. He was a digital construct. A persona created and operated by none other than Courtney Bennett. The voice on the phone? Courtney using a voice modulator app. The emails? Sent from aliases created with burner accounts. The text messages? Manually scheduled and timed by Courtney herself. She had manufactured an entire relationship, down to fabricated family emergencies, to keep Erica tethered. What? That's the part no one could quite answer. Maybe control. Maybe boredom. Maybe the satisfaction of knowing someone would surrender their whole life just to stay in her orbit. This revelation didn't come out in court right away. It was buried deep in the forensic report, an almost incidental detail during the wider investigation. But when detectives confronted Erica with the truth, she crumbled. "He's real," she kept saying over and over. "You're wrong. You're all wrong." She rocked in her chair during questioning, covered her ears, refused to believe it. Only when she was shown the phone logs, the ones showing that every single number Logan ever called from was linked back to Courtney's devices, did the panic truly set in. Her entire romantic reality had been manufactured by her best friend, and she had never known. When prosecutors finally pieced it all together, the case took on a horrifying clarity. Courtney hadn't just exploited Dylan's crush when he was a minor. She had also built a trap for Erica years before, layer by layer, so that when the time came to dispose of Dylan, she had someone else ready to act. Courtney didn't need to touch Dylan. She just needed to press send. There was one more moment that still haunted investigators. The message that finally pushed Erica over the edge. June 26, 11:45 p.m. "Courtney, if you don't do this right, you know what happens. They'll arrest you. They'll find Logan. And then your name's ruined. No teaching. No job. No future. Erica, what do I do? Courtney, finish it. Make it believable. You're the victim now." That was the message that came just minutes before Dylan's final injury. The forensic team found remnants of other chats too. Conversations where Erica had second-guessed herself, questioned the plan, even begged for another way. Courtney's response was always the same: threaten, reassure, redirect. "You've already gone too far. Don't think. Just follow the plan. You'll be safe if you do this right." And perhaps the most chilling line of all. The boy doesn't matter anymore. In court, prosecutors pushed to have Courtney charged not just with aiding abuse, but with conspiracy to commit assault and digital coercion resulting in death, a charge rarely used but painfully fitting. Her defense team argued it was all exaggerated, that Courtney never meant harm, that it was all just bad advice taken too far. They painted her as a concerned friend, not a mastermind, but the messages were undeniable. The manipulation was provable. The trail she left behind was too detailed to be accidental. Erica, on the other hand, pled guilty, not to murder, but to voluntary manslaughter and endangering the welfare of a minor. She told the court in her own words, "I let someone else speak for me until I couldn't recognize my own voice." Her sentencing hearing was silent. The judge called the case a failure of personal will, clouded by years of psychological erosion. But Martha Parker, Dylan's mother, called it something else. "Cowardice," she said, standing before the courtroom. "You could have stopped. You could have walked away. My son was not your scapegoat." Courtney received a 7-year sentence after a plea deal. Alex Turner got 8 months for obstruction and complicity. Erica Monroe was sentenced to 7 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 4. None of the charges included premeditated murder, because proving intent, especially psychological intent, remains one of the hardest burdens in American law. Dylan's family never spoke publicly again after the trial, but a letter from his father was read aloud during sentencing. It closed with a single sentence. "You turned his love into a weapon and then called it education." The courtroom was quiet as the last witness stepped down. It had been 3 months since the sentencing. Erica Monroe was already serving her time at Muncie State Correctional. Courtney Bennett, too, had begun her 7-year term at a women's facility in upstate New York. Alex Turner, released after 8 months for good behavior, had vanished from public view. But the echoes of Dylan Parker's death didn't fade with the verdicts. Instead, they lived on, not just in legal documents but in people, in testimonies, in traces of a life that had tried so hard to mean something. It started with the test score. In August, the GED office issued results for the summer session, the one Dylan had been preparing for. Erica had registered him herself. Despite the chaos, despite the abuse, despite the collapse of his world, Dylan had taken the test just 3 weeks before he died. He passed. Math, 162. Reading, 174. Science, 158. Social studies, 169. He passed every subject, and with solid scores. When the envelope arrived at his parents' home, Martha Parker didn't open it right away. She placed it on the kitchen counter, untouched for 4 days. Then one morning she took a deep breath, slid it open, and wept for nearly an hour. "He did it," she whispered over and over. "He did what they told him to do." And it still wasn't enough. She had the certificate framed and placed it above the mantel, beside a photo of Dylan in middle school, holding a science fair ribbon, smiling like the world was still safe. Meanwhile, at the state attorney's office, a different kind of record was being preserved: testimony. Over the course of the investigation, Dylan's digital life had been reconstructed. Messages from his phone, voice notes, cached photos. Some of it was ordinary teenage content. Some of it was heartbreakingly earnest, like a voice memo saved in his drafts. "I think maybe she'll like me again if I do this right. Maybe she'll come visit. Maybe she'll say I'm not weird anymore." Or a late-night note in his phone. "I miss home, but I don't want to disappoint her. I don't know which her I'm even talking about anymore." He had been writing to 2 ghosts. One real, one invented. Both unreachable. The DA's office made a rare decision. With the permission of the family, they compiled a public report, not just to explain the case but to warn others. About grooming. About coercion. About manipulation that doesn't leave visible bruises. They titled it, "A Test of Trust: The Psychological Collapse Behind the Parker Case." In one section, they detailed how Dylan's dependency was not born of violence, but of hope. He believed, it read, that if he could endure, he could earn love. And that belief, the report concluded, was weaponized. In prison, Erica began therapy. At first she resisted. Said she was fine. Said she understood what she did. But something shifted after the truth about Logan was fully confirmed, when she heard Courtney, under oath, admit to the entire fabrication. The courtroom transcript quoted her plainly. "Yes, I created the Logan account. I used a voice changer. I wanted to teach Erica a lesson about loyalty." Erica, seated behind her attorney, buried her face in her hands and did not move for the rest of the session. After that, she started writing letters. Not to the Parkers, they'd asked for no contact, but to herself. Pages and pages of them. Her therapist later said it was the only time she seemed to understand the difference between guilt and responsibility. She never stopped seeing herself as a victim, the therapist noted, but she started admitting she wasn't innocent. Courtney, by contrast, remained unchanged. Her time in prison was marked by stillness. No outbursts. No remorse. During a psychological evaluation ordered by the court, she described the entire ordeal as an unfortunate breakdown in boundaries. When asked if she understood the impact of her actions, she reportedly said, "I didn't kill anyone. I gave advice. They made their own choices." The psychologist wrote a single line in his assessment that made its way into court records. Courtney Bennett exhibits a profound detachment from consequence, not from malice but from moral disinterest. At Reading High School, where Dylan had once studied, teachers gathered in the library one afternoon for a staff meeting. The principal closed the door and, in a trembling voice, asked for a moment of silence. "We lost a student," she said, "and whether we knew him well or barely at all, we were part of the system that lost him." She paused. "I don't want us to forget him." In response, the faculty launched a new program, the Dylan Initiative, a mentorship program for at-risk students who leave traditional schooling. Each participant would be assigned a certified adult mentor, not just a tutor, a presence, and every mentor would be monitored, trained, and rotated, because trust, they agreed, should never be handed out blindly again. In September, the local newspaper ran a follow-up piece. It didn't focus on the trial or the sentencing. It focused on Dylan Parker the person. The headline read, "The quiet boy who tried to earn his way into love." The article shared details about Dylan's hobbies, how he once wanted to be an EMT, how he loved astronomy and carried a copy of The Martian in his backpack for months. It included quotes from classmates who remembered his shy laugh, his nervous energy, and how he always stayed behind after class to help stack chairs. One quote from a girl who sat near him in sophomore English class read, "He didn't talk much, but one day he gave me half his sandwich because I forgot my lunch. I never forgot that." Grief doesn't end with closure. For the Parkers, every day was a collision of memories and silences. His room remained untouched. His toothbrush still stood in the holder. Sometimes at night, Martha would walk past the door, pause, and whisper, "Good night, baby," even though no one was inside. But somewhere in those long nights and quiet mornings, the truth settled. Dylan hadn't disappeared. He had been erased, piece by piece, by people who wanted him silent, obedient, and gone. But they failed to take the one thing that would outlast them all: his name. In the days following Dylan Parker's death, Erica Monroe handed investigators a flash drive. Inside were 2 video files, both time-stamped within 24 hours of the incident. She claimed they proved her version of events, that Dylan had become unpredictable, obsessive, possibly dangerous. But what the video showed was far less clear, and far more disturbing. The first video opened with Dylan standing against a blank wall. He looked tired. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes unfocused. He was reciting phrases from a GED textbook. Constitutional amendments, key dates in American history. His voice was low, almost whispering. A woman's voice, Erica's, could be heard behind the camera. "Again," she said. He repeated the line. Louder. He tried. At one point he stopped, exhaled, and asked, "Can I sit?" There was silence. Then a sharp response. "No. You'll sit when you get it right." The video ended 32 seconds later. The second video began later that night. Dylan was standing again. Same corner of the room. This time his sweatshirt was off. He wore only a white t-shirt and sweatpants. There were visible marks on his arms. His voice cracked as he read. His lips trembled, but he didn't cry. Off camera, Erica asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" He didn't answer. She continued filming. Then, softly, Dylan said, "Can I hug you?" The camera didn't move, but the silence that followed was deafening. He stepped forward slightly. Just one step. Erica whispered, "Don't." The camera tilted abruptly. The recording ended. To a casual viewer, the footage was unsettling, but not incriminating. Erica used it to justify her story, that Dylan had been unstable, that he had made her uncomfortable, that she acted in self-defense after his behavior crossed a line. But the detectives watching the footage weren't casual viewers. They saw something else. A performance. Staged angles. Repeated commands. No sign of threat. No raised voice. No aggression from Dylan. Only exhaustion, compliance, and a subtle fear that seemed to hang around him like damp air. It didn't look like surveillance. It looked like a script. They went back through Erica's phone and laptop. That's when the patterns emerged. Folders named backup. A Word document titled "For the Police If Needed." Bullet points: he touched me first. He asked to hug. He got angry when I said no. The file was last edited 3 days before Dylan's death. It wasn't just planning. It was storyboarding. But Erica hadn't written that document alone. A parallel search into Courtney Bennett's email revealed matching drafts. Notes, suggestions, even phrasing corrections. Don't say he was weird, say he was fixated. It sounds more clinical. Avoid angry. Use intense instead. If you record anything, keep your voice calm. You're the victim, remember? It became clear that Erica wasn't just reacting. She was being coached into creating an alternate version of reality. One where she was the vulnerable one. Where Dylan was a looming threat. Where the power imbalance was reversed, on paper, in video, and eventually in court. But there was a flaw in the plan. Dylan himself. He had told someone. Not his parents. Not a friend. But a volunteer GED tutor he'd met briefly at a library orientation session 3 weeks prior. Her name was Trina Blake, a retired teacher in her 60s who volunteered part-time with the County Literacy Council. She'd only met Dylan once, during a weekend prep workshop, but she remembered him. Quiet but polite, she told investigators. He stayed after the session to ask a question. Seemed nervous, like he was choosing every word carefully. That day, Dylan had asked about independent testing, whether students needed their guardian's approval to leave the GED program. I thought it was just a logistical question, she said, but now I know. He was trying to get out. She also recalled one other thing. At the end of their conversation, Dylan looked around and asked, almost inaudibly, "Is there a way to report someone, if they're not hitting you exactly, but they won't let you go?" That moment, that offhand question, became crucial. It showed pre-existing fear. It challenged the idea that Dylan had suddenly snapped or become erratic. It confirmed what prosecutors had suspected. He had been trying to escape, quietly, carefully, but he never got the chance. At trial, the videos were shown in full. The courtroom was silent. Some observers leaned forward, searching for signs of threat in Dylan's posture or tone. Others couldn't even look at the screen. When the second video ended, the one with the hug, Erica's face crumpled. She whispered, "He was too close." But the judge was unmoved. "What I saw," he later wrote in his decision, "was a child too afraid to sit down." Courtney's defense team tried to distance her from the videos. She didn't hold the camera, they said. She didn't force Erica to record. She never appeared on screen. But prosecutors countered with metadata, messages, audio files, even screen recordings of Courtney using video editing software to adjust Erica's files, trimming moments of hesitation, sharpening her own voice in the background to sound more supportive. In one email to Erica, she wrote, "Clean up the beginning. You sound unsure. You can't sound unsure." She hadn't just rewritten Erica's memories. She had edited the footage to match them. Dylan's parents sat through every minute. Martha clutched her husband's hand so tightly during playback that he lost feeling in 2 fingers. When it ended, she said only one thing: "That's not my son." And yet it was. Reduced to a character in someone else's story. Bent and reshaped until the truth no longer fit the frame. In the final weeks of the trial, the prosecution presented their closing argument. This case isn't about violence in the traditional sense. It's about narrative, about who gets to speak and who gets believed. Dylan Parker was never a threat. But in the hands of 2 women who feared consequences more than conscience, he became a threat on tape. They paused. And now, even in death, he must prove he didn't deserve what happened. The sentencing had come and gone. Courtney Bennett received 7 years in state prison. Erica Monroe also got 7 with parole eligibility after 4. Alex Turner served just 8 months and quietly disappeared. The legal system had spoken. But what followed wasn't silence. It was something quieter and heavier. In the weeks after the verdict, the courthouse steps in Allentown no longer drew crowds. No more reporters. No cameras. No angry opinion pieces in the local paper. But inside room 213, tucked in a filing cabinet behind civil archives and divorce petitions, was a thick folder labeled Parker vs. Commonwealth, 2013-1245 CR. It held everything. The phone logs. The transcripts. The autopsy. The screen captures from those two videos. The timeline. The witness names. The fragments of a boy no longer alive to speak for himself. Investigator Dana Schaefer, who had worked the case from the start, once said the folder weighed more in her hands than any she'd ever carried. Not because of its physical contents, but because of everything it left unsaid. For Martha and Daniel Parker, life split into two eras, before Erica and after Dylan. They didn't sell the house. They didn't renovate his room. They didn't change their phone numbers. But they changed everything else. Daniel quit his job at the auto repair shop. Martha stopped volunteering at the library. They no longer went to church. Not because they lost faith, but because people kept saying the same thing. You couldn't have known. But they had known. Something. Enough. The quiet strain in Dylan's voice. The way he dodged video calls. The strange, scripted text. The "I'm fine" that never sounded fine. They hadn't asked the hard questions. They hadn't insisted. They trusted. And in their hearts, they believed that trust cost their son his life. 6 months after sentencing, the GED certificate still hung above the fireplace. But now it was joined by something else. A framed list of 5 questions Martha had written by hand. Have you heard their voice this week? Did you ask how they really feel? Are you assuming they're okay? What are you ignoring right now? Who are they trying to impress and why? I look at those every morning, she said in the only interview she gave post-trial. They're not just for Dylan. They're for everyone who has someone quiet in their life. Elsewhere at the State Education Board, something unusual happened. Erica Monroe was posthumously removed from the teaching registry. Not because it would change anything, she was already incarcerated. But as one official wrote, this is not a disciplinary action. It's an erasure of presence. And then they added more quietly. She does not belong in classrooms. Not even as a memory. Courtney, on the other hand, remained largely unrepentant. In prison, she maintained a small circle, mostly women who admired her intellect. She read obsessively. She offered to help others with legal forms, parole paperwork, appeals. One inmate described her as dangerously persuasive. She never yelled, never threatened, just made you want to agree with her. When asked in a post-sentencing psychological reevaluation if she regretted anything, Courtney reportedly said, I regret giving my time to people who couldn't manage themselves. The psychologist wrote, subject demonstrates continued detachment from human consequence, despite measured cognitive empathy. It was a polite way of saying, she knows what she did. She just doesn't care. But what of Erica? For the first time in her life, she began speaking for herself. In prison, she started journaling regularly. Her entries, later shared with prosecutors and eventually with the Parkers through an intermediary, revealed a woman unraveling in slow motion. One passage read, I kept trying to be someone worth loving. I just chose the wrong person to measure that by. Another said, when he died, I was terrified of losing everything. Then I realized I already had. She never asked for forgiveness. She never used Dylan's name. But the guilt, the real kind, was finally visible in ink. There's no plaque for Dylan Parker. No statue. No scholarship fund. His parents refused all of it. We don't want a memorial, Daniel said. We want people to stop forgetting the kids who go quiet. That's enough. But something strange happened a year after the verdict. A librarian at Reading High School noticed a worn paperback left in the donation bin. Inside was The Martian, the same book Dylan used to carry in his backpack. There was a note folded inside the front cover. No name. No date. Read, this helped me survive a place I didn't want to be in. Maybe it can help someone else. Back at the courthouse, room 213 still holds the folder. It hasn't been touched in months. But one day, investigator Schaefer returned. She opened the file, reread her old notes, looked at the printed screenshots again, the stills from the video, the messages, and then on a yellow sticky note, she wrote something new and placed it inside the folder. He didn't fail the test. They did. She closed the file and left it there, for the record, because long after the prison doors shut, after the headlines faded, after the courtroom emptied and the lights were turned off, the real sentence remained, not in prison terms, not in plea deals, but in what was taken and what can never be returned. A voice, a future, and a boy who just wanted to pass a test and be enough for someone.